You notice how nobody talks about Israel, even though we know they have nuclear weapons? They jailed the scientist who leaked this to the media, right? Decades behind bars. He's trapped. He still can't leave anywhere. Not just nuclear weapons, but also chemical weapons, white phosphorus. I mean, no one speaks about them. It's not even about, oh, maybe there should be nuclear inspectors, maybe some more transparency. No, it's not even that. They won't even discuss Israel and its nuclear weapons. This is verboten. This is not allowed. You can't talk about Israel. You have to have nothing but praise for them. And everything Israel does, it's always justified, right? So the Israelis, if you bring up the nuclear program, they'll say, yeah, but we are surrounded by countries who want to destroy us. Motherfucker, you destroyed Palestine. What the hell? What are you talking about? The aggressor pretending to be the victim? What are you doing? Occupying Syria, occupying Lebanon, occupying Palestine. When you take people's land, yeah, they get pissed off. What don't you understand about this? And then on top of it, they have the gall to say that Iran is a threat. How is Iran a threat? What? You're the one with nuclear weapons? Then they say the ballistic missile program. Now here they're right. Iran does not need nuclear weapons. Iran practices asymmetric warfare, which has proven to be very effective. Today, the axis of resistance is stronger than it's ever been. Hezbollah, Syria. I'm not saying they haven't suffered. They have gone through all these hardships and they're still standing. Do you understand? That in and of itself is already a victory. The Palestinian resistance. Last year, the rockets, they were firing faster, more quantities. So I'm not going to go into all the details of all the weapons they have, but the Yemenis, look, 7 years, they're still here. The Houthis, as they say. It's the Yemenis. It's 80, most of the country live there. Of course, Iraq has the Hashd al-Sha'bi right now. And Iran itself is stronger than ever. And that's why the Israelis are not happy. You know why? Trump left the nuclear deal. He said, this is the worst deal and it doesn't go far enough. What does that mean, doesn't go far enough? When they're saying that, they're not talking about nuclear weapons or nuclear energy or a nuclear program. It's nothing to do with that. They're talking about two other things. They're talking about Iran's ballistic missile program and Iran's support for the axis of resistance. Of course, they don't say it that way. They say ballistic missiles, and then they call the second one malign activities or terrorism, right? So for them, Iran supporting Hezbollah, this is terrorism. Iran supporting Hamas, this is terrorism. The thing is, these two have nothing to do with a nuclear deal. And the Americans couldn't even follow the first deal. Why should Iran make a second one? Based on what? For what? Iran is never going to give up the ballistic missiles. Never, not in a million years, because that is what Israel is afraid of. And not just that, there are other things, of course, the Americans, again, it's not just me saying that. Scott, was in the military, we talked about this. What if the U.S. invaded Iran or attacked Iran? What would happen? How would that look like? How would that play out? And it's just a suicide mission. It's a suicide mission. It's just, it's unfeasible. And that's his military expert opinion. You go listen. We talked about the Iran deal, lots of things. But my point is that you don't need nuclear weapons to deal with nuclear actors in this particular situation. Because in the 60s, for example, the Israelis, they were assassinating German scientists. To be fair, they were Nazis, so most of them. So I don't think they'll be missed. But German scientists working for Egypt. Why? Because Egypt was building ballistic missiles. So they took that as a serious threat. And that's why with Iran, they also take it as a threat. And they wanted the nuclear deal to cover the ballistic missiles. But even then, let me be very clear. Even if you did that, even if you put everything they wanted, it's never enough. The real reason Israel opposes the nuclear deal is because they want to keep Iran isolated. If there's no nuclear deal, that means there are sanctions on Iran, right? The U.S. has sanctions on Iran. Iran was the number one sanctioned country until the war in Ukraine started. Then it was Russia. If you know that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, then you don't have to worry about that. So you don't need a nuclear deal. And if there's no nuclear deal, you get to keep Iran under sanctions too. So it's a win-win. And this, of course, they will never, ever, ever fucking tell you. This one sentence, you will never hear it on CNN. You will never hear it on the BBC because they are goddamn liars. And that's why no one respects or watches mainstream media anymore, because they're just doing propaganda. Why should Iran do these things? Even I myself, right? And many, many, many Iranians I've seen say this too. Why should Iran have a nuclear deal? Iran is a signatory of the NPT. The NPT is the Non-Proliferation Treaty. That means Iran does not seek nuclear weapons and does not solicit nuclear weapons and does not spread knowledge on how to build nuclear weapons. Under the NPT, if you sign in, you're allowed to have a nuclear program, a civilian nuclear program. So my point is, what Iran is doing, enriching uranium for research and civilian use, is legal. It's allowed to do that. It signed the NPT. But the Americans are basically making Iran concede and compromise just to be left alone. Iran doesn't want anything from the Americans. They just want the US to leave them alone and not put sanctions. So do you see how crazy this is? Like, Iran does not need permission from the Americans to do anything. Certainly not a nuclear program. But that's really funny. Guess who gave Iran its first nuclear reactor? Oh man, many Iranians are pissed off because they, it's like basically the US Uncle Sam coming and wagging his finger in their faces and saying, do what I say, do what I tell you. Why? Iran doesn't have to do it. Iran has the right to a nuclear program. It's just a fact. Every country that signs the NPT. This is not controversial. How do you think countries around the world have nuclear programs? Civilian, not weapons. Nuclear energy. There's nothing controversial about it if it's just for research or civilian use. And yet the Americans make it controversial. They lie and say, oh, Iran's building a bomb. What do we have here? This is the development of Iran's uranium stockpile. This is Iran's stockpile of low enriched uranium by quarter in kilograms. It's rising 2008, 2010, 2012. And then it continues up until the moment the nuclear deal is signed. And then what happens? It plummets. Look at that. Iran is actually respecting the agreement that it signed. Iran actually, Iran has respect for its its own word. Its word means something. It doesn't renege on its obligations. JCPOA is signed. The nuclear deal is signed. Bam! It plummets from a little over 8,000 kilograms to zero. And look at this. Do you see that? Donald Trump leaves the nuclear deal May 2018. Iran is still at zero for a whole year. And it's after that Iran says, okay, you know what? We need leverage. We're going to keep enriching uranium until you get back in the deal. Talentless Hipster says, what is the source? I'm sorry, it's cut off. If I zoom out, you'll see underneath it's Statista. Okay, and the sources are the IAEA and Bloomberg. And you can even look up, IAEA's comments on Iran. Is Iran following the nuclear deal? This is back when the US was still in it. Is it complying? This is from 2019, and the IAEA says that Iran is abiding by the nuclear deal. Remember, this is a year after Trump left. To me, that indicates goodwill. The cameras that were just removed was also goodwill. And when someone keeps, turning the other cheek and giving you their hand and you keep spitting in their face, what do you expect, man? This is nothing. If Iran wanted to, hurt anybody, oh man, they could do anything. Right? I told you both cruise and ballistic missiles, but Iran is not looking for a fight. Iran just wants to be left alone. It's really that simple. And Iran supports the oppressed, The Palestinians are oppressed. Syria is oppressed. Yemen is oppressed, and Iran supports them. What is wrong with that? You should be wondering and asking yourself, why is Syria like this? What happened? Who attacked it? Why did dozens of countries do this? And who are the ones that stood by Syria? Right? What about Palestine? You know, when you look at the level of support that the Iranians are giving Palestine, it's shocking, right? In a good way. Why do I say this? Because you would think the Arab countries are the ones who would support Palestine the most, and they did. The majority. Let me be clear. When I say Arab countries, in this case, I'm talking about the governments, the people at the top. The Arab people in every Arab country all support Palestine. This is not even a question. I mean, you would have to struggle to find somebody who doesn't support Palestine in an Arab country. You'll get a struggle. Seriously, like that. That's really. In any case, my point is the governments. You know, today in 2022, there are governments, Arab governments, the Saudi government, or should I say regime, like they do in the media, the Saudi government, the Emirati government, the Moroccan government, who are normalizing ties with Israel, either overtly or under the table. Saudi Arabia as well, right? And Bahrain. So this is disgusting. I mean, they are not only going against the wishes of their own people, but against any sense of morality. And my point is that a country like Saudi Arabia should be giving enormous support to the Palestinians. Saudi Arabia has the US by the balls. Biden is going to Saudi Arabia to beg them for oil. They could tell him, you know, make concessions about Palestine. We oppose the occupation. No. They're not going to do that to Saudis. On the contrary, they're probably going to ask Biden if he can facilitate the normalization so they can establish ties with Israel, because they're dealing with Israel under the table. Make no mistake. And I want to say that this is not only shameful, but it tells you that these kingdoms, they're really U.S. puppets. That's really it. And go to Jordan, go to Egypt, ask someone on the street, anyone you see, literally anyone you see, if they support the Palestinians, they will tell you yes, right? The governments, on the other hand, they have ties with Israel. The United States has Egypt by the balls with the aid that they receive. And these countries, I mean, they go against the wishes of their people. And I want to be clear, though. I want to be very clear. If you go to Lebanon, for example, this doesn't mean that you're not going to find, I don't know what the right word is, racism, xenophobia, discrimination. There is discrimination against Palestinians. When I'm saying go ask anyone in the street, I'm saying it as like sort of an analogy to get my point across. But my cousin Roni, he told me, man, the Lebanese, they're really like you can find some people who are really treating Palestinians like shit, because it happened to him. So my point is, though, when we say go ask anyone in the street, it means the majority of the people, and it's still true. It doesn't change. So Iran. How come Iran, which is not an Arab country but is a Muslim country, is supporting the Palestinians more than Saudi Arabia or Morocco, for example? Where's the Arab unity that they talk about? Where's the Arab unity? It isn't there because the Saudi Arabian government is not Arab. They are effectively a U.S. puppet. So I guess that explains it.